Welcome in, everybody. We are diving deep into mental health social work today.
Yeah, it's gonna
And
be good.
it is going to be good. It's going to be more interesting than it sounds, I promise, when we say mental health social work. We are going beyond just the headlines. We're really diving into some really interesting material today, a collection of essays and firsthand accounts from,
Yeah,
academics,
the
practitioners,
people who know.
the people who know.
Most importantly, people who have experienced it firsthand.
Exactly, who have navigated the system, are living it, and are really speaking out about it.
And it's timely because it's a hot topic right now. Policy and practice in mental health. And it's a big one. It's a big conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a big one because, the statistic that always gets me is 1 in 4 people
Yeah.
will experience a mental health
That's a lot of people.
challenge in their lifetime.
It is.
1 in 4, that is huge. And that really highlights how widespread these issues are.
And the personal cost is one thing. But the essays really brought home, like, the financial cost of this. In 2012 alone, it cost the UK $105 billion.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
That's more than some countries' GDPs.
Yeah.
Wow. Which really puts into perspective
Big
the
figure.
need for
Effective policy.
effective policy and support. And speaking of policy, it was interesting to me kind of going through this material, how the government will acknowledge the link between social inequality and mental health,
Right.
but then enact policies that...
That almost seemed to make it more difficult.
Yes.
You look at something like austerity,
Right.
which has had a massive impact on these safety nets and
Yeah.
public services.
And then there are these work capability assessments, which I have to admit, I wasn't super familiar with before really diving into this material.
So these assessments determine if somebody is well enough to work and therefore eligible for benefits, right?
Yeah.
But the essays argue that they put people in this awful position of having to prove they're incapable of working.
Right.
And the processes can be, the essays highlight how they can be really dehumanizing and potentially inaccurate. And then on top of that, you've got the privatization of these assessments, which just complicates matters.
Right. So it's like another hurdle and another hoop to jump through.
Yeah.
That's adding stress to already really difficult situations. And it's like the system itself is almost
Against itself.
working against the people it's meant to help.
Yeah. It's a really complex situation. But what seems to be a recurring theme in these essays is the dominance of the medical model when it comes to mental health.
Right. This idea that mental health challenges are primarily illnesses that need to be diagnosed and treated.
Medicated. Yeah.
Medicated. And that's kind of everywhere you look, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think while medication definitely has its place, the essays really dig into the potential consequences of this being the dominant model.
Right.
One of the things that they're most concerned about is how this kind of leads to the othering of people who are experiencing mental distress.
It creates this us and them. Right. Yeah.
Exactly, where it's like there's us, and then there are those people struggling with mental health.
And the essays argue that that kind of thinking can be really damaging. It increases stigma.
Right.
It can prevent people from feeling understood and supported. And what's perhaps even more concerning is that it can turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
If you are constantly being told that you are flawed or you are broken in some way,
Right.
it's difficult to see yourself beyond that, isn't it?
Right, and it limits your own understanding of what you're capable of.
Exactly.
Which is, like, even if I think about times when I've been really struggling, if everyone around me is treating me like I'm broken, it's going to impact my ability to see myself beyond that and to heal and to move forward.
Exactly. It's about seeing the whole person, their strengths as well, their resilience, all of that.
And that kind of leads into what I found to be one of the most compelling parts of these essays, which is this focus on lived experiences.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, it's not enough to just talk about mental health in this abstract way.
Yeah. We need to hear from the people who are navigating these systems and living through these challenges.
And have that firsthand experience. And they are the experts.
Yes.
They are the experts in their own experience.
Yes, and those insights are so valuable, not just for, understanding the shortcomings of the system,
Yeah.
but also for pointing towards solutions. And one thing that kept coming up was this idea of experiential knowledge, which I thought was really interesting.
And the essays really highlight how important this is.
Yes.
Because it disrupts everything we think we know
Yes.
about mental health
Right.
and what recovery can look like.
Okay, so we've talked about
Yeah.
the shortcomings,
Yeah.
the importance of lived experiences.
Yes.
But what about solutions? What are the alternatives being proposed?
And this is where I think it starts to get really exciting
Yeah.
because they're not just critiquing,
Yeah.
they're also offering up ways forward.
Great.
And one of the phrases that kept cropping up was social action. So what does that actually mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, I think it's about recognizing that our mental well-being isn't just this internal thing going on in our heads.
Right.
It's massively influenced by the world around us.
Yeah.
So things like access to affordable housing, to meaningful employment, strong social networks.
Which are often
Exactly.
Yeah.
So as essays are arguing that a social action approach means acknowledging those external factors and working to address them.
Right.
It's about creating communities where people feel supported, empowered,
Right.
not just managed.
Right. And I thought one of the essays that illustrated that really well was the one about the community garden project
Yes.
that had had so much success in reducing social isolation.
And what's interesting there is how something as simple as gardening together
Yeah.
can tap into all those different things.
Right.
You know, it gives you that social connection. It gives
Yeah.
you purpose.
Yeah.
It's physical activity.
Yeah.
All those things that we know are good for mental well-being.
Yeah. And it shifts the focus away from what's wrong with individuals
Yeah.
to what they can contribute
And what they can achieve,
and what they can achieve. Yeah.
which is a really important point.
Mm.
And a lot of the essays do highlight that need to move away from that deficit-based model, don't they?
Right.
To one that fosters people's strengths and resilience.
Yeah, and I think this leads us to another key theme that emerged, which is the unique role of social workers in all of this.
Right.
Because they really are kind of on the front lines, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Of
they
this
are.
battle for a more just mental health system.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh.
They're constantly navigating this complex landscape.
Yeah.
And they've got this deep understanding of both individual struggles and the systemic factors at play.
Right. One of the essays described it as a constant balancing act
Right.
of supporting individuals while working within these bureaucratic systems that aren't always
Yeah.
designed with people's best interests in mind.
It's a tough one.
Uh-huh.
Think about it. You are trained to provide care and support, and yet you're often completely bogged down with paperwork, limited resources, pressure to meet targets that might not necessarily align with what is best for the individual.
Right. It just sounds emotionally
It's really demanding.
draining.
It is. And actually, that's something that the essays touch on quite a bit.
Right.
This risk of burnout, compassion fatigue. They're constantly exposed to suffering and trauma.
And these systemic barriers
Yeah.
that are just constantly in their faces.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess
That's a big ask, isn't it?
it is, and it makes me think about those seeds of resistance that we were talking about, these alternative practices that are starting to emerge.
Yeah.
Did the essays go into any detail about what those look like in action?
They did. And one area that really stood out was this rise in work-led social enterprises.
Okay, unpack that for me. What exactly is that?
So imagine a blend of social mission and entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay.
So these organizations provide services, but they are driven by this deep commitment to social impact. And often they actually involve those with lived experience in their operations.
So it's not just about, like, profit.
No, it's about making a difference.
It's about making a real difference in people's lives.
Exactly. And we are seeing these popping up more and more.
Right.
Offering everything from peer support groups to creative arts therapies,
Right.
even employment training programs. And these are tailored for people facing those challenges.
And I love that story about the music group run by the student social worker,
Yes.
where it's like, this wasn't formal therapy,
No.
but it was this incredible space for people to express themselves.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
It is.
And to connect and just feel joy.
And it taps into something, doesn't it?
Yes.
It taps into something much deeper.
Yeah, beyond just managing symptoms.
It's essential for well-being, I think.
Absolutely. Were there other examples that really stood out to you?
Yeah, one of the essays went into quite a lot of detail about soteria houses.
Okay.
And these are longer-term residential communities.
Okay.
And they provide a non-clinical, home-like environment
Right.
for people who need that support.
So it's a real contrast to the often sterile and isolating environment
Exactly.
of a traditional psychiatric ward.
It's about safety, belonging, understanding.
Right.
And it challenges that assumption, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That medication is always the answer.
Right.
And instead, they focus on building trust,
Right.
encouraging personal growth,
Right.
and really empowering individuals to manage their own challenges.
It's inspiring,
Yeah.
but also it makes the limitations of the current system even more apparent.
It is a bit of both, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hope and frustration, I think, intertwined.
Yeah.
But I think these initiatives are proving that change is possible,
Yes.
that we can move beyond simply diagnosing and managing mental health
Right.
to creating a world where people feel genuinely supported, empowered, and valued.
It feels like such a huge task, though.
It is.
Where do we even begin to create that world?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yep.
And I don't think there's a single answer.
Right.
But there are definitely things that we can all do within our own spheres of influence.
Okay. Give us something concrete. Where do we start?
I think it starts with challenging the stigma around mental health.
Right.
We need to normalize these conversations, you know?
Yes.
Be willing to listen without judging
Mm.
and create spaces where people feel safe seeking help.
Yeah, like recognizing that mental health is just as important as physical health.
Absolutely.
And that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
We need to be able to talk about
Normalize it.
anxiety or depression as easily as we talk about a cold
Exactly.
or a sprained ankle.
Yeah.
And beyond just talking about it, you
Yeah.
know, supporting those organizations that are really doing the groundwork,
Yeah.
whether that's volunteering your time,
Yeah.
donating to a social enterprise, or even just spreading the word.
Yeah.
All of that can have a huge impact.
It all makes a difference.
Yeah, and we can't forget about the social workers themselves in all of this.
You know, they're the ones.
Yeah,
Because-
these essays really highlighted
Yeah.
the demands of those jobs and the very real risk of burnout.
Absolutely. They are the ones on the front lines, day in, day out, navigating these really complex systems.
Right.
And advocating for the people that need it most.
So we have to have their backs,
We do.
which means advocating for things like better working conditions, better resources, and policies that actually,
Yeah.
you know, prioritize the well-being
Put it into practice.
of service users
Yes.
and those providing the care.
100%. It's about systemic change, isn't it?
Yes.
And that requires all of us to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Individuals, communities, policymakers,
Yeah.
working together to build that more just and compassionate world.
Yeah. There was a line in one of the essays that I really loved, which was, we don't just need to manage mental health, we need to cultivate it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because it's about moving away from that
Yeah.
reactive
Yeah.
to something that's more preventative.
Right.
Where, you know, mental well-being is nurtured right from the very beginning.
Right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a powerful
It's a powerful vision, isn't it?
vision. Yeah.
It's one we could all get behind.
One we can all get behind. It is a journey, though, not a quick fix.
It is.
But I think the essays
Yeah.
and the work being done by so many dedicated individuals and organizations shows us that it's a journey worth taking.
It is.
It's about moving beyond those old
Yeah.
limiting narratives
Mm-hmm.
about mental health
Yeah.
and embracing something
More holistic,
more holistic,
compassionate,
effective.
effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to the heart of
And it's been a really
Interesting. Yeah.
interesting deep dive today, hasn't it?
Yeah.
We've explored so much.
We covered a lot of ground.
We have.
But more importantly, I think we've uncovered some really critical questions
Yeah.
that I hope you'll keep grappling with long after this episode ends.
Yeah.
The listening doesn't stop here. It doesn't. So I guess the final thought that we'll leave you with is, how can you contribute to a world where mental well-being is valued, where it's supported and nurtured for everyone?
Ooh, that is a good question.
Big question.
What small or even big actions
Yeah.
can you take within your own life,
Yep.
your community,
Your workplace.
your workplace to make a difference?
It all adds up.
It really does.
It does.
It really does. Keep learning, keep questioning, keep diving deep.
No.
Until next time.
It's a big question,
Yeah.
but a good one.
It is a good one.
Yeah.
It is a good one. And on that note, I think that's a good place to
To wrap up?
wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much for listening to this deep dive
Yes, thanks for joining us.
into mental health social work. We hope that
We've given you something to think about.
we've given you something to think about.
Yeah.
That it's been more interesting than maybe you thought it was going to be.
Hopefully.
And that you'll continue
Keep the conversation going.
to keep the conversation going. So until next time.
See you later.